He saved her life in the storm, but an ancient Apache tradition changed everything. Maya, a young woman who loved adventure, had set out early, eager to explore a trail she had always dreamed of visiting. She had prepared carefully, packing her backpack with water, snacks, and a small first aid kit. Her boots crunched softly on the gravel path, and the wind whispered through the trees. She felt free, as if the mountains had welcomed her with open arms. Maya had always found comfort in nature. The forests made her feel small in the best possible way, reminding her that the world was bigger than her worries. Birds sang from the branches, and the smell of pine filled the air. She paused at a bend in the trail to take a photo of a waterfall cascading down rocks. The water glimmered in the sunlight, and for a moment she felt completely at peace. But as she continued along the trail, clouds began gathering overhead. At first, they were just small, fluffy gray clouds, but soon they darkened into thick, heavy masses. The wind picked up, rustling the trees violently. Maya felt a shiver run down her spine, though she tried to convince herself it was just the cool air. She had hiked in storms before, and she knew how to take precautions. Still, there was something about these clouds that felt different, almost urgent. By the time she reached a narrow path along the side of a steep slope, the storm had fully arrived. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, turning the dirt trail into slippery mud. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and flashes of lightning lit the sky. Maya's heart pounded. She knew that this part of the trail was dangerous during bad weather. One wrong step could mean disaster. Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, but she remembered how far she had come. She was so close to the waterfall's hidden pool, a place she had read about in old hiking journals. She carefully placed each foot on the slick ground, trying to keep her balance. The wind howled, tugging at her jacket and backpack. A sudden gust pushed her slightly off balance, and her hand slipped on a tree branch she was holding for support. Before she could react, her foot slid, and she tumbled down a short but steep embankment. Rocks cut her clothes and scraped her skin, but thankfully, she landed on a patch of soft moss at the bottom. Her heart raced as she tried to calm her breathing. Maya realized she couldn't move easily. The mud had made the slope slippery and treacherous, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. Panic started to creep in, and she called out for help, her voice almost drowned by the roar of the rain and wind. "Hello? Is anyone there?" she shouted, hoping anyone was nearby. She didn't expect an answer, but she had to try. Meanwhile, John, a local park ranger, was on his usual patrol. He had grown up in these mountains and knew their moods better than anyone. When he saw the storm rolling in, he immediately checked the trails he knew hikers often used. His radio crackled with warnings, but he also felt uneasy. Something told him that someone might be caught in this sudden weather. Not far from the main trail, John heard faint cries over the wind. He paused, straining his ears. There it was again, a desperate human voice calling for help. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the sound, dodging fallen branches and puddles forming along the path. His boots slipped occasionally, but he kept moving, guided by experience and instinct. Maya's voice grew weaker as she tried to call again. She was cold, soaked, and exhausted from the fall. Fear gripped her chest, making it hard to breathe. Then through the rain, she saw a figure moving toward her. It was hard to make out at first, but as he came closer, she realized someone was coming to help her. Relief flooded her, almost making her cry. John reached her just as a bolt of lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the muddy slope and the storm around them. "Are you okay?" he shouted over the roar of the wind. Maya nodded, though she was trembling. I slipped," she said, her voice shaky. John carefully extended his hand, helping her stand. He assessed her injuries quickly. She had a few scratches and bruises, but nothing life-threatening. "Hold on to me," he said firmly, guiding her back toward a safer part of the trail. The rain continued to pour, soaking them both, but John moved steadily, using his knowledge of the mountains to find a secure path. At one point, a fallen tree blocked their way. John lifted it just enough for Maya to crawl under, encouraging her with calm words. She felt a mix of fear and admiration for his bravery. As they continued, John noticed how exhausted Maya was. He decided they needed shelter quickly. "There's a small ranger cabin not far from here," he said. "We can wait out the storm there." Maya's relief was immense. She had never felt so grateful for someone's presence in her life. Every step towards safety felt like a small victory, and she clung to John's arm as they navigated the slippery terrain. Finally, they reached the cabin, a sturdy wooden structure that looked small but safe in the storm. John helped Maya inside, shutting the door against the wind and rain. The warmth of the cabin's interior was comforting, and Maya sank onto a bench, dripping wet and exhausted. John handed her a dry towel and checked her once more for injuries. "You're lucky I was nearby," he said quietly. Maya looked at him, her eyes wide with gratitude. I don't even know how to thank you," she murmured. John smiled faintly but didn't reply immediately. Instead, he settled her by the fire while he prepared hot water to help her warm up. As they waited, the storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, a sense of calm began to settle. Maya couldn't stop thinking about how close she had come to danger and how John had risked his own safety to save her. She felt a strange mix of fear, relief, and awe. She had always heard stories about heroic rescues, but experiencing one firsthand was overwhelming. John, on the other hand, remained focused but quietly observant. He had seen many hikers underestimate the mountains, and he knew how easily accidents could happen. Still, something about Maya's situation felt different, almost fated. He couldn't explain it, but he felt a responsibility to not only protect her physically, but also guide her through what was to come. As the storm continued to pound against the cabin walls, Maya wrapped herself in the towel, thinking about the events of the day. She had set out for adventure, but what she found was far more intense than she could have imagined. The mountains had tested her courage and her survival instincts. She realized that she had learned a valuable lesson. Nature demanded respect, and sometimes help came in the form of strangers who risked everything for the sake of others. By the time the storm finally began to ease, Maya was still sitting quietly by the fire, reflecting on what had happened. John looked at her, sensing that this experience had already changed something in her. There was a connection now, formed not just by circumstance but by courage, trust, and the intensity of the storm. Both of them knew that the day's events were only the beginning of something that neither fully understood yet. Outside, the mountains were still wet and wild, but the immediate danger had passed. Inside the cabin, Maya and John shared a quiet moment, recognizing the fragile line between life and death, and the extraordinary way that people could step forward to protect each other when it mattered most. The storm had passed, leaving the mountains damp and glistening. Water ran in tiny streams down the slopes, and the air smelled fresh, like the earth itself had been washed clean. Maya sat quietly in the cabin, her legs still trembling slightly from the ordeal of the fall and the slippery climb back. She could still hear the faint drip of water from the roof, each drop echoing in the quiet room. John moved around efficiently, tending to the cabin's small fire and checking the supplies. He had been a ranger for many years and knew that safety after a storm was just as important as survival during it. He handed Maya a warm cup of tea. The steam rose in delicate swirls, and the warmth felt like a small comfort against the chill that had settled in her bones. "Drink slowly," he advised. "It will help warm you up and get your strength back." Maya took the cup with both hands, feeling the heat seep into her palms. She sipped cautiously, savoring the warmth. For the first time since the fall, she felt a small sense of normalcy return. John glanced at her, noticing the scratches on her arms and legs. "You're lucky you didn't hurt yourself worse," he said. "The slope was steep, and the rocks could have done serious damage." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had been lucky, yes, but she knew that luck alone had not saved her. Without John, she might still have been stranded in the mud and rain. As the cabin filled with a quiet calm, Maya tried to focus on what had just happened. She had always loved the mountains, but now she saw them differently. The beauty she had admired earlier in the day had revealed a hidden danger. She realized that nature, while magnificent, could also be merciless. The mountains demanded respect, attention, and caution. John, noticing her thoughtful expression, decided to explain a little about the area. "This region is beautiful, but it's unpredictable," he said. "Storms can come quickly, trails can become slippery, and rivers rise fast. Many hikers underestimate how quickly conditions can change." Maya listened carefully, absorbing every word. She had felt that unpredictability firsthand, and his advice carried a weight that no guidebook could match. After a few minutes, John suggested they assess her injuries more closely. "I want to make sure nothing serious was overlooked," he said. He had first aid training, and his calm demeanor made Maya feel safe. She lifted her sleeves, revealing several small scratches and bruises. John cleaned the cuts with water and applied bandages, explaining each step in a steady voice. "These are minor," he reassured her, "but keep them clean. Infection is the only real risk now." Maya felt a mix of gratitude and admiration. She had met many people in her life, but few had acted with such calm competence in a crisis. John's presence was a reminder that courage wasn't just about grand gestures. Sometimes, it was about steady, quiet care when someone needed help the most. Once her injuries were tended to, John turned his attention to the storm's aftermath outside. He had to make sure that the path ahead was safe. "We can't stay here forever," he said. "Eventually, you'll need to continue your journey. Or if you prefer, I can guide you back to the main trail so you can return safely." Maya nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She wanted to continue her adventure, but she also knew that safety had to come first. John gathered a few supplies, a rope, a flashlight, and a map of the area. "It's still wet outside," he warned. "We need to be careful." Maya followed him to the cabin door, peering out at the glistening trails and the mud that now coated everything. The storm had left the mountains in a raw, wild state, beautiful but dangerous. As they stepped outside, Maya realized how slippery the ground had become. Each step required careful attention. John led the way, pointing out stable rocks and tree roots she could use for support. His experience was evident in every movement. He moved with confidence, anticipating obstacles and dangers that Maya couldn't see. She felt a deep sense of trust forming, knowing that he could guide her safely through the treacherous terrain. Halfway down the trail, they came to a small stream swollen by the rain. The water gushed quickly over rocks, creating a strong current. Maya froze, unsure how to cross. John knelt and tested the water with a stick, then smiled reassuringly. "We'll go together. Step carefully and I'll support you." She grasped his hand tightly, feeling both nervous and grateful. Step by step, they crossed the stream, balancing on slippery rocks and keeping an eye out for sudden shifts in the current. Once they were safely on the other side, Maya exhaled in relief. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." John nodded, acknowledging her words without overemphasizing them. He understood that true help didn't always require recognition. Sometimes it was enough just to act when it was needed. The trail continued upward, leading to a narrow ridge with steep drops on either side. The storm had loosened soil and small rocks, making the path even more dangerous. John paused to assess the safest route. "Take your time," he said. "We'll go slowly." Maya felt her pulse quicken. Every step felt critical, and the wind still tugged at her jacket, reminding her of the storm's earlier power. As they navigated the ridge, John shared small stories about the mountains, how certain rocks were formed, how animals sought shelter during storms, and how the landscape had changed over the years. His words distracted Maya from her fear, and helped her focus on the present moment rather than worrying about what could go wrong. She realized that part of being brave wasn't ignoring fear. It was moving forward despite it, step by step, guided by knowledge and care. Eventually, they reached a more stable area, a flat clearing with a view of the valley below. Maya could see the storm clouds slowly breaking apart, revealing rays of sunlight that lit up patches of green forest. She felt a sense of awe mixed with relief. The mountains, she realized, were both beautiful and dangerous, but now she had someone to help her navigate their challenges. John looked at her, noticing the mix of exhaustion and wonder on her face. "You're doing well," he said. "Not everyone makes it through situations like this without panicking. You've been brave." Maya smiled faintly, grateful for his encouragement. She had been scared, yes, but she also felt a growing sense of accomplishment. She had survived the storm, thanks in large part to John's guidance. As the sun began to set, John led Maya to a small, sheltered area where they could rest for the night. He gathered dry leaves and branches to create a makeshift sleeping space, ensuring that she would be safe and dry. Maya couldn't stop thinking about the events of the day. Every moment had been intense, from the fall to the rescue to navigating the dangerous terrain. Yet she also felt a strange sense of connection forming with John, who had been her guide and protector throughout the ordeal. Before settling down, John pulled out a small emergency radio to check for any updates on trail conditions. He explained the importance of staying informed in the mountains, especially after a storm. Maya listened intently, realizing how much she had underestimated the complexity of nature. Adventure, she now understood, required not just courage but preparation, awareness, and respect for forces beyond human control. As they sat together in the fading light, Maya's thoughts drifted. She reflected on the kindness of strangers, the strength required to act in critical moments, and the fragile line between safety and danger. She realized that today had been more than just a near accident. It had been a lesson in humility, trust, and the unexpected ways people could touch each other's lives. Night fell, and the mountains grew quiet. The sound of the river nearby, which had been ferocious during the storm, now flowed gently, creating a soothing background melody. Maya felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had faced the storm and survived. She had been scared, but she had also witnessed courage in action. John, sitting calmly beside her, seemed to embody the quiet strength she had admired throughout the day. Before closing her eyes, Maya looked at him and said softly, "I don't know how to repay you for everything today." John simply smiled. "You don't need to," he said. "The mountains teach us many things, but one of the most important is that we look out for each other. That's enough." Maya nodded, understanding that some debts were beyond words, existing instead in the silent acknowledgement of care and courage. As sleep began to take over, Maya felt a strange mix of exhaustion and peace. The storm had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately changed her. And though she did not yet understand everything that lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. She would never forget the man who had saved her life and guided her safely through the storm. The next morning, the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind a world washed clean and sparkling with dew. Maya woke slowly, feeling the stiffness from the previous day's fall and the long trek through mud and rain. She stretched and looked around the small cabin, noticing the warmth of the sunlight filtering through the wooden walls. John had already started a small fire, and the smell of hot tea drifted toward her. Maya took a deep breath. She was still a little shaken by the events of the storm, but she felt stronger somehow. Surviving the ordeal had given her confidence she hadn't realized she possessed. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat near the window, watching the mountains awaken. Birds flew across the sky, and the wind carried the scent of wet pine and fresh earth. It was peaceful, yet a part of her mind remained alert, remembering the danger from just 24 hours ago. John noticed her quiet reflection and decided to share something important. "There's something I should tell you," he began, his voice calm but serious. Maya turned to look at him, sensing that this was more than just casual conversation. John continued, "What happened yesterday saving someone during a storm, it's more than just luck here. In Apache tradition, it carries a meaning deeper than most people understand." Maya blinked in surprise. She had heard of Apache customs in books and documentaries, but she had never encountered one in real life. "What do you mean?" she asked, curiosity overtaking her caution. John took a deep breath. "There's an ancient belief that when someone saves a life during a storm or in the mountains, a bond is formed between the rescuer and the rescued. It's said that the spirits of the land witness the act, and the connection lasts until it is honored in a specific way." Maya felt a shiver run down her spine, not from cold, but from the weight of what he was saying. The storm, the fall, and John's brave actions suddenly felt even more significant. "A bond?" she asked. "What kind of bond?" John's eyes met hers, steady and serious. "It's spiritual," he explained. "It's a reminder that life is precious, and that those who protect each other in times of danger are connected in ways that go beyond words. The tradition requires acknowledgement, usually through a simple ritual." Maya was both fascinated and slightly overwhelmed. She had always considered herself practical, grounded in facts and logic. The idea of a spiritual bond linked to an ancient tradition was something entirely new. Yet, as she thought about how John had saved her without hesitation, guiding her carefully through every danger, she felt an unspoken truth in his words. Perhaps some things could not be explained purely by science or reason. John noticed her contemplation. "I know this may sound unusual," he said gently, "but it's a belief that has guided people here for centuries. It's about respect for life, respect for the mountains, and respect for each other. It's not something to fear, but something to honor." Maya nodded slowly. She didn't fully understand it yet, but she felt a sense of reverence for the idea. The mountains themselves seemed to echo his words, still shining with the freshness of rain and the quiet majesty of survival. After breakfast, John suggested they prepare for a small journey. "We need to perform a simple ritual," he said. "It's part of honoring what happened yesterday and the bond formed. Don't worry, it's safe and it doesn't take long, but it's important." Maya agreed, curiosity and respect guiding her decision. She had survived the storm, and now she wanted to understand the deeper meaning behind her experience. They packed a few supplies, a small blanket, water, and a few offerings that John had prepared according to tradition. The ritual was simple but meaningful. It involved speaking words of gratitude, placing a small offering near a sacred spot in nature, and acknowledging the spirits of the land. John led Maya along a trail that wound through dense forest and over small ridges, each step reminding her of the care and skill required to navigate these mountains. As they walked, John explained the significance of each action. "The offering," he said, "is not for me or for any person. It is for the spirits of the land and the ancestors who watch over it. It honors life and the act of protection. By participating, we acknowledge the bond formed between us and the mountains." Maya listened intently, feeling a deep sense of respect for the tradition. She placed her hands gently on the small offering of dried herbs and stones, closing her eyes for a moment to honor the spirits. The ritual itself was quiet and meditative. John spoke words that Maya did not fully understand, but the tone and intention were clear. It was about gratitude, respect, and the recognition that every life is valuable. Maya repeated her own words quietly, speaking from the heart. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of connection not only to John but to the land itself. The forest, the mountains, and even the remnants of the storm seemed to acknowledge her sincerity. After the ritual, they sat together in silence near a small river. The water flowed gently, reflecting the clear sky above. Maya felt a profound sense of peace. The fear and adrenaline of the previous day had faded, replaced by a quiet understanding. She realized that this experience was not just about survival. It was about learning, about respect, and about forming connections that transcended ordinary life. John looked at her with a small smile. "You did well yesterday," he said. "It's not just about surviving the storm. It's about learning from it and honoring what happened." Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and humility. She had learned that courage was not just about physical strength, but also about trust, respect, and the willingness to accept help when it was needed. As they prepared to leave the sacred spot, Maya felt a lingering sense of awe. She understood that the bond John had spoken of was not something to fear but something to respect. It was a reminder that life was fragile and precious, and that acts of bravery, no matter how small, could carry profound meaning. She had survived, but more importantly, she had learned lessons that would stay with her forever. On the way back to the cabin, Maya and John talked quietly about the mountains, the storm, and their shared experience. They laughed softly at small moments, slipping on muddy paths, narrowly avoiding puddles, and navigating tricky rocks. Yet beneath the lightheartedness was a deep respect for the land and for each other. The shared experience had created a bond, as John had explained, one that went beyond words and beyond immediate understanding. When they returned to the cabin, Maya felt a sense of gratitude that went beyond simple words. She had been terrified, exhausted, and vulnerable just a day ago. Now, she felt a quiet strength and a deep respect for the traditions that guided those who had lived in these mountains for generations. The ritual had not only honored the bond between her and John, but had also connected her to something larger, a timeless respect for life, and for the people and spirits that shared the world with her. John helped Maya prepare for the next stage of her journey. "The mountains are still wet and the paths can be tricky," he warned. "You'll need to be careful, but now you know something important. You are capable, and you are not alone." Maya felt the truth of his words deeply. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of the world around her. As she packed her bag and prepared to continue her journey, Maya glanced back at John and the cabin, feeling a sense of respect and gratitude she could barely put into words. She had learned that life often brought unexpected challenges, and that the people who stepped forward to help were sometimes guided by traditions, wisdom, and courage that went far beyond ordinary understanding. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the mountains. Maya felt ready to move forward, carrying not only her belongings but also the lessons, gratitude, and understanding she had gained. The bond John had spoken of lingered quietly, a subtle reminder of courage, care, and the connections that life sometimes demands we honor. Even as she stepped onto the trail, Maya realized that this experience had changed her forever. She would remember the storm, the fall, the rescue, and the ritual, not just as events but as lessons in respect, courage, and the value of human connection. And somewhere deep in her heart, she knew that the mountains, the spirits, and John himself would always remain part of that story. The sun had risen high, casting warm light over the mountains and illuminating the forest with a golden glow. The storm of the previous day was completely gone, leaving the air fresh and filled with the gentle scent of wet earth and pine. Maya felt both excited and nervous as she prepared for the ritual John had spoken about. She had seen how the storm had tested her courage, and now she was about to participate in a tradition that was centuries old. John led her along a narrow trail, winding between tall trees and past moss-covered rocks. The forest was quiet, except for the soft sound of a distant river and the occasional bird call. Each step reminded Maya of the events from the previous day, the fall, the fear, and the moment John had reached her just in time. The memories were still vivid, and she realized that the ritual was not just symbolic. It was a way to honor all that had happened and to recognize the bond between her and John, and between humans and nature. As they walked, John explained the significance of the ritual in more detail. "This ceremony," he said, "is about acknowledging life and the connections formed through acts of courage. We honor the mountains, the spirits, and the people who protect each other." It's simple, but it carries deep meaning. Maya listened carefully, feeling a sense of reverence. She had never experienced anything like this, and it made her reflect on how the world contained mysteries and traditions far beyond her usual understanding. They reached a small clearing beside a gently flowing river. Sunlight danced on the water, creating sparkling patterns that shifted with the current. John knelt and carefully arranged a few items: a small bundle of dried herbs, a smooth stone, and a few wildflowers. "These are offerings," he explained. "They represent gratitude, respect, and life. Placing them here honors the bond formed and acknowledges the spirits of this land." Maya watched intently, feeling the importance of every movement. John gestured for her to join him. Maya knelt beside him, holding a small piece of cloth in her hands. John instructed her to close her eyes, take a deep breath, and focus on the moment. "Think of the storm, the rescue, and the connection you feel," he said. "Speak from your heart and let the land witness your gratitude." Maya obeyed, closing her eyes and letting the sounds of the forest fill her senses: the rustling leaves, the gentle river, and the distant calls of birds returning after the storm. With John's guidance, she placed the cloth gently beside the herbs and stone. She whispered words of thanks, expressing gratitude for her safety, for John's courage, and for the lessons the mountains had taught her. As she spoke, she felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of peace and connection that she had not felt before. The ritual was more than she expected. It felt as though the forest itself acknowledged her words, embracing the gratitude and respect she offered. John then performed a small part of the ritual himself. He spoke softly, his voice carrying a tone of reverence and care. He thanked the mountains, the spirits, and the ancestors, acknowledging the courage it took to act in times of danger. Maya listened, feeling the depth of tradition and the centuries of wisdom behind each word. It was clear that this was not just a ceremony for them. It was a practice that connected the present with the past, honoring all those who had come before. As the ritual continued, Maya began to reflect on the events of the storm and rescue with new understanding. She realized that courage was not only about action, but also about recognition and respect. The act of saving a life, while heroic in itself, carried deeper meaning when acknowledged and honored. She understood that this bond with John, formed in the midst of danger, was now formalized through this ritual, and it would stay with them in an invisible but profound way. The forest around them seemed alive with the spirit of the ceremony. Sunlight filtered through the branches, creating patterns on the ground that shifted as the wind moved the leaves. Birds seemed to pause, as if observing the solemn moment. Even the river appeared to flow more gently, as though it, too, recognized the significance of the ritual. Maya felt a connection not only to John, but to the entire natural world around her. The mountains, the trees, and the water all felt part of the bond she was now honoring. John helped her finish the ritual, guiding her hands to make the final placements of the offerings. "This part is about acknowledging life as a gift," he said. "By participating, we recognize the courage it took to face danger and the care shown to protect life." It's simple, but it carries profound meaning. Maya nodded, feeling the truth of his words deeply. The ritual was not complicated, but it was powerful. It reminded her that acts of bravery and kindness were sacred, and that acknowledging them was just as important as performing them. After the ritual, they sat together in the clearing, watching the river flow. Maya felt a calmness she had not experienced in a long time. The fear and adrenaline from the storm had faded, replaced by a quiet sense of understanding. She realized that the bond formed through the rescue, and now honored through the ritual, was a reminder of how fragile and precious life could be. It was a lesson she would carry with her forever. John spoke quietly, breaking the silence. "The mountains teach us many things," he said. "Courage, respect, humility, and most importantly, that life is connected in ways we often don't see. Today, you honored that connection, and in doing so, you've learned one of the most important lessons the land can offer." Maya looked at him, feeling a deep respect and gratitude. She had always valued learning and experience, but this was unlike anything she had encountered before. As they prepared to leave the clearing, Maya felt a renewed sense of confidence. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of the world around her. The ritual had not only formalized the bond with John, but had also connected her to something timeless, a tradition that had endured for generations, teaching the value of life, respect, and courage. On the walk back to the cabin, Maya and John talked about the mountains, the storm, and their shared experience. They laughed softly at small moments, slipping on muddy paths, carefully stepping over rocks and navigating the tricky terrain. Yet beneath the lightheartedness was a deep respect for the land and for each other. The shared experience and the ritual had created a bond, as John had explained, one that went beyond words and would remain with them both. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was higher in the sky, casting warm light over the wooden structure. Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for her safety, but for the lessons she had learned and the connection she had experienced. She understood that life often brought unexpected challenges, and that those who stepped forward to help others were guided by courage, respect, and wisdom that could transcend ordinary understanding. John helped her settle for a short rest, and Maya reflected on the entire experience. The storm, the fall, the rescue, and now the ritual had changed her. She felt more aware of the world, more respectful of life, and more connected to the people and traditions that shaped it. The bond with John, formed through courage and honored through the ritual, was a quiet but powerful reminder of the strength found in care, respect, and human connection. As she watched the sunlight dance on the cabin walls and listened to the gentle flow of the nearby river, Maya realized that this experience would stay with her forever. It had taught her that bravery and kindness were deeply intertwined, and that honoring both was an essential part of life. The mountains, the forest, and the ritual had shown her that some lessons could not be learned from books or stories. They had to be lived, felt, and respected. Before resting, Maya looked at John and said softly, "I understand now. The bond, it's real. And I'm grateful for everything, your help, your guidance, and this tradition." John smiled, his eyes reflecting both pride and calm understanding. "You've learned well," he said. "Respect life, honor courage, and remember that every act of care matters. That is the essence of this tradition, and of living fully in the mountains." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight and beauty of the day settle into her heart. She knew that the storm had tested her, but it had also given her something precious: understanding, gratitude, and a bond that went beyond words. She had survived danger, witnessed courage, and participated in a ritual that connected her to generations past and to the natural world around her. The mountains had given her a gift she would never forget. The sun had climbed high into the sky, casting a warm glow over the mountains and forest. The storm from days before was only a memory now, leaving behind the fresh scent of rain-washed earth and sparkling streams. Maya stood outside the cabin, taking a deep breath and letting the crisp mountain air fill her lungs. She felt stronger than she had before, not just physically, but in a way that went deeper, a sense of understanding, gratitude, and connection that she had never experienced. She glanced at John, who was checking a small map and making sure the trail ahead was clear. The quiet confidence in his movements reminded her of the courage and skill he had shown during the storm. She thought about how easily things could have gone differently, how quickly danger could strike in the mountains. But now, standing there, safe and whole, she understood that the events of the storm had given her more than just survival. They had given her perspective. John looked up and smiled. "Are you ready to continue?" he asked. Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and reflection. The mountains were still beautiful, still challenging, and still full of lessons to be learned. But she knew that the storm and the ritual had changed the way she would see them, and the world forever. As they walked together, the trail leading down from the cabin seemed softer, gentler, though still uneven and unpredictable. Maya moved carefully, recalling John's guidance on the previous day. Each step reminded her of the dangers she had faced and the courage she had discovered within herself. She realized that surviving the storm had taught her not just about physical skill, but about patience, trust, and the value of accepting help when it was offered. The forest around them was alive with the sounds of post-storm activity. Birds sang from the treetops, insects hummed in the underbrush, and the river beside them flowed steadily, sparkling in the sunlight. Maya felt a deep sense of awe and respect for the land. The mountains were not just a backdrop for adventure. They were living, breathing entities, demanding care and understanding from anyone who entered their paths. She felt connected to the land in a way that was both humbling and empowering. John pointed out different plants and trees along the trail, explaining their uses and significance. "The people who lived here long before us understood this land," he said. "They respected it, learned from it, and created traditions to honor it. That's why the ritual mattered. It's not just about us, it's about connecting with something larger than ourselves." Maya listened closely, feeling the truth in his words. The storm and the rescue had been a powerful event, but now she understood that the ritual had made it meaningful in a deeper, almost timeless way. As they reached a small clearing, Maya paused to take in the view. From this height, she could see the mountains stretching into the distance, rivers winding like silver ribbons through the valleys, and the forest shimmering with the remnants of rain. She felt a profound sense of gratitude, not only for her safety and John's bravery, but for the lessons she had learned. Life, she realized, was fragile, precious, and deeply connected to the people and world around her. John noticed her pause and spoke softly. "You've changed," he said. "The storm tested you and the ritual helped you see what matters. You're stronger, more aware, and more respectful of the world. That's the true gift of experiences like this." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had always believed in learning through experience, but this was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The lessons were not just about survival. They were about courage, connection, and understanding the importance of honoring life. They continued along the trail, eventually reaching a fork that led back toward the main path. Maya felt a sense of accomplishment with every step. The fear she had felt during the storm had transformed into confidence, and the awe she felt for the mountains had grown into a quiet respect. She realized that the storm had been a teacher, John had been a guide, and the ritual had been a bridge connecting the past, the present, and the future. Along the way, Maya and John shared stories and reflections. They laughed at small missteps, like slipping on muddy roots or nearly stepping into puddles, but beneath the light-hearted moments was a deep sense of understanding. The bond they had formed during the storm and honored through the ritual was quiet but unmistakable. It was not dramatic or flashy. It was built on courage, trust, and shared respect. As they neared the main trail, Maya felt a mix of emotions. She was relieved to be leaving the rugged path behind, but she also felt a sense of sadness that this chapter of her journey was ending. The mountains had changed her, and the bond she had formed with John and the land itself was something she could not leave behind. She understood that life often brings unexpected challenges, but also gifts, connections, lessons, and moments that shape who we are. John stopped and looked at her. "You'll remember this day," he said quietly. Not just the storm, but the lessons, the bond, and the respect for the land. It's a part of you now. Maya nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. She had survived danger, witnessed courage, and participated in a tradition that connected her to generations past and the natural world around her. The mountains had given her a gift she would carry forever. As they continued down the trail, Maya reflected on the people who had come before her, those who had lived in these mountains and created traditions to honor life and courage. She realized that her experience was part of a much larger story, a story of respect, connection, and the wisdom of those who understood the land deeply. The ritual had not just been about her and John. It had been about acknowledging life itself and the bonds that sustain it. When they finally reached the main trail, Maya felt a sense of completion. She had faced the storm, been rescued, honored a tradition, and learned lessons that would stay with her forever. She looked at John, grateful for his guidance and courage. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything," John smiled, a quiet, humble smile. "It was my honor," he replied. "You showed courage too, remember that." Maya took a final look at the mountains, feeling a deep sense of reverence. The forest, the rivers, the trails, they had all been part of her journey, shaping her experience and teaching her about courage, respect, and connection. She knew that the bond formed during the storm and honored through the ritual would remain with her, a quiet but powerful reminder of the lessons she had learned. As she walked down the main trail, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose and understanding. Life could be unpredictable and sometimes dangerous, but it was also full of opportunities to learn, grow, and connect. The mountains had shown her the importance of courage, the value of help from others, and the deep meaning of traditions that honor life and bonds. She felt a quiet joy and gratitude, knowing that she had been part of something extraordinary. By the time she reached the edge of the forest and saw the open valley beyond, Maya realized that this journey had changed her forever. She had survived a storm, been guided by courage, and honored a tradition that connected her to the past, the present, and the natural world. She understood that true bravery was not just about facing danger, but about recognizing life, respecting it, and honoring the bonds formed through acts of care and courage. As she turned to take one last look at the mountains, Maya felt a deep sense of peace. She knew that the lessons she had learned, the experiences she had lived, and the bond she had formed with John would remain with her forever. The mountains, the forest, and the ritual had given her something precious: wisdom, courage, and a profound understanding of life's value. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill her lungs, and smiled. She had faced fear, discovered courage, and experienced the power of connection. The mountains had tested her, guided her, and changed her, and she knew that this story, her story, would stay with her, shaping the person she would continue to become. With that, she walked forward into the valley, carrying the lessons, gratitude, and wisdom of the mountains with her. She had survived the storm, honored the ritual, and discovered that life's true treasures were not always tangible. They were found in courage, connection, and respect. And as the sun shone on the path ahead, Maya felt ready to face whatever adventures awaited, carrying the mountain's gift within her heart forever.